Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session Preparing Your Team for Incident Response, Training, and Simulation Exercises. I'm Shilpa Goswami, and I'll be your host for the day. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few house rules. For our attendees, the session will be in listen only mode and will last for an hour, out of which last 10 minutes will be dedicated to Q&A. If you have any questions during the webinar to organizers or panelists, use the Q&A window. Also, if you face any audio video challenges, please check your internet connection or you may log out and log in again. About our speaker, Mike Admon. He is an entrepreneur and technology leader. He has over 20 years of executive cybersecurity and project management experience in leading global enterprises. His previous positions include being the CISO of Bright Machines, the CTO of Vedin Systems, and the principal cybersecurity architect in Cisco Systems COE. Mike has also served in an executive role at the Elbit Systems subsidiary leading SAR delivery. Without any further delay, I would hand over the session to you, Mike.
Hi, thank you very much. So hello everybody. We'll spend the following 30-40 minutes talking about the incident response training and simulation exercises. So we are going to discuss the cyber threats that are constantly evolving and they require a big attention from all the stakeholders. So a well-trained incident response team is required to respond promptly in order to handle incidents and minimize the effect of them. So it can minimize downtime, it can minimize loss of the data, and any further damage that can be caused to the systems or the reputation of the organizations. And of course, it needless to add that legal and regulatory requirements in terms of the compliance and regulations, they do require a good incident response practices. So as an overview of the presentation, we are going to talk about the threat training and simulation exercises, the importance of them. We are going to talk about benefits of those exercises, what are they giving in terms of the improving readiness, improving the collaboration of the team, the development of decision-making skills, and of course, to reduce the time of the response to the incidents. And we are going to mention some of the best practices of how to basically make those exercises as efficient as possible by setting clear objectives, setting realistic scenarios that will be as close to the real world as possible, make sure that all the relevant stakeholders are participating, and by the end of those exercises, we want to analyze the results and we want to incorporate the lesson learned into the incident response plan in order to continuously evolve. So let's do some definitions. What is incident response? So it's a systematic approach of detecting, containing, eradicating, and discovering and recovering from security events. And we want to minimize the impact of those events and incidents in order to restore the normal operation as efficient and as quick as possible. So the incident response as a frontline defense against cybersecurity incidents, it helps organizations to respond efficiently from security breaches, cyber attacks, and recover just in a timely manner. The proactive or reactive strategy of the incident response to identify and mitigate potential security incidents and minimize damage that can be caused by actual incidents. So we want to get as much training as possible for as broadest variety of incidents that we are training about to be as much as ready as we can to a real incident that can, or just matter of time when it comes to our organization. So what would be the key components of the incident response? As mentioned previously, we have 4 key components, which is detection, containment, eradication, and the recovery, and they are having this order with purpose. So the detection is basically the component that is being used, tools, technologies, and different techniques to identify and alert the security incidents. The accurate and timely detection is very important, crucial for a quick response action. Now, next phase, after the detection, we need to contain the incident. So we'd like to isolate the incident or the cause of the incident to prevent further spread of the damage. So it may involve isolating affected assets, disabling access to different users and services, and maybe implementing ad hoc fixes during this process. Next key component would be eradication. So we need to identify, to find the root cause of the incident that is affecting our systems or networks. So through investigation, analysis, and the remediation. And last but not least, we are going to the part of the recovery when everything was done and we have found the root cause of the incident or the events, and we want to go back to normal or to go like a business as usual. So restoring normal operation involves implementing permanent fixes, unlike the temporary fixes that we can implement during the containment phase. And of course, we need to get into the learning and improvement, and it must be a very crucial and important part of the incident response cycle. So let's set some objectives for our training. What do we expect? So we want to enhance skills and knowledge. So we want to make sure our teams getting expertise of the team members involved in the incident response. So those enhancements will include a technological skills, understanding of the tools or implementing new tools, learning and implementing new techniques, understanding the incident response policies and procedures that are written in the organization or adopted by organization, and of course, implementation of the best practices. Another thing that we want to do is to improve the response readiness. So incident response training focuses on improving the overall readiness of the team, which is preparing the team to quickly detect, contain, eradicate, and recover from incidents, and provide those team members all the necessary resources, knowledge, and tools that they require. Next one would be the coordination and communication. During the incident response process, the members of the team of the incident response, they need to effectively collaborate during the process, during the preparation to the process, and after the process. Decision-making skills. Incident response training also focuses on improving the decision-making skills of the team members. Includes the training on the risk assessment, how to prioritize the activities and the risk, and effective decision-making under pressure, because it's totally different thing to train and to get in the real incident. So the members must know how to deal with the pressure, and the more prepared they are, the less pressure will be making them taking more time and do less effective things. Stress team coordination. Team coordination is critical in incident response to ensure the collaboration to be as seamless as possible. The information should be shared and the response should be effective. The benefits of the team preparedness and coordination would be that a well-prepared team and coordinated incident response team, it's faster detecting and responding, which reduces the response times. It can be like a time to respond, time to eradicate, time to fix, eventually minimize the impact of the security incidents, and improving overall response effectiveness. some of the training methods. So the first one that we're going to discuss, called tabletop exercises, it's a standard training method. It's a simulation of hypothetical scenarios in a controlled environment. So the exercises goes like the team members that are participating, they are discussing and collaborating on how they would respond on the incident without actually performing any technical action. And this type of training is very helpful in practicing decision making, communication, and coordination. Another method would be simulated scenarios, which involves creating realistic situation that is mimicking as close as possible the real world scenario. So in this simulation scenarios, the team members are required to respond to the scenarios using the existing incident response tools, technologies, and technique, and the procedures, of course, which allows to have a good hands-on practice and formalization and familiarization with actual incident response processes. Another training method would be red teaming or red team, which is a training method that involves actual simulation attack or a simulation of the security breach, generally done by external team, external company that is performing a red team. In bigger organization, they may hold an internal red team as a good practice. So it's challenging and evaluating the incident response capabilities of the internal team, which is the blue team. So it's like a game of the red team and the blue team. When red team is attacking, and blue team need to understand that there is attack and deal with it. There can be other methods, like for example CTF or capture the flag, when some specific target is being set and the participants need to gain this target. For example, the red team need to get some data or get some high privilege credentials, and the blue team need to identify that it's being happening and to stop this scenario. So it's very important to have this again for the incident response training, and it's really depending on the resources that the company have. It can be like human resources or simply budget, the goals that they set for themselves, and the objectives of the training program. Now, many organizations are taking those training methods one after the other. So they start with the tabletop exercises. They are making sure that they are getting familiar with the process. Then they simulate some scenarios, and then they bring a red team to do a real life testing with real but controlled attack simulation process. So of course, each and every method has its cons and pros. So the tabletop exercises, they are very cost effective. They provide low risk environment for practicing. It promotes decision making and coordination skills. Unfortunately, it doesn't provide any hands-on or technical training, and it's lacking the realism to compare to the actual incidents. The simulation scenarios, they may offer more realistic training experience, and they do give some more hands-on practice to the participants with actual incident response and techniques. The problem here, or the cons, it requires more resources, it costs more money, it requires more preparation, and during those simulation scenarios, generally it only takes partial replica of the real world incidents complexity. So about the red teaming, so the pros would be to provide valuable insights into potential vulnerabilities and challenges, while evaluation incident response capabilities and identification of the areas that needs improvement. The cons of the red teaming would be required of coordination with external teams, external companies in many cases, like mentioned before. It can require additional security consideration, because imagine yourself, you are bringing in external company that is going to attack your network. So there are, of course, other methods that can be a mixture of those, and they can be more tailored to a specific training goal or a specific phase or a specific maturity level that organization is in. And of course, it will require specialized resources, and every time the exercise will focus on a particular area of the organization with the replication of the actual incident scenarios. So let's talk about simulation exercises. Simulation exercises, they involve creating realistic scenarios that closely mimicking the real world incidents, the environment. So meaning that we are trying to create an environment that will be as close as possible to our real company environment or our production environment. And this is the place when we train. And it's about a hands-on experience, practical experience with tool, capabilities, etc. So there are different types of simulation scenarios, as mentioned before, and different types of those scenarios are providing different exposure of the team to a potential scenario or a potential real world conditions. So let's talk a little bit about benefit of the simulation exercises. So the simulation exercises biggest advantage is a realistic training. So it provides a practical training experience that looks as close as possible to a real scenario that is mimicking the real environment, the real organization. It provides a hands-on practice, which means that it's not only need to go through the procedures and do some decision making based on the paper, like in the tabletop exercise, but the participants are really trying themselves as a hands-on practice. And it's a real good testing on the team coordination. So how the incident response team works as a team, how do they respond as a team? It gives them to practice the communication and collaboration in a very good manner. And it can help to identify gaps in the process that needs improvement, so teams can refine the procedures and the protocols they are using. So let's talk a little bit about how do we design simulation exercises. So first we need to set a training goals and objectives. We need to clearly define it in order to know that we are going to do exact things, we are expecting a specific outcome, and we know how to measure it. The scenarios, realistic, should be as crafted as close to the real world environment as possible. And I'm saying it multiple times, but if you are going to practice on the environment that is not really mimicking or not like your real environment, so whenever the real incident is happening, it will be much more challenging to deal with them. And last but not least, it's very important to select appropriate participants and assign them roles. So the team members of the incident response would be different people from the organization and not necessarily technological people. So it can be the technological team, it can be external team, it would be involving a legal team and more other teams. And in several scenarios, it can go even to the public relation teams. And it is very important that everybody in the organization knows what is going on, knows their role, and getting proper training. So let's go a little bit about a step-by-step how to conduct those exercises. So first, we start with preparing participants and the logistics. So we're making sure that all the materials that are required are provided, the simulation environment is properly set up, and we are briefing all the participants on the objectives of the exercise. We are guiding them through the rules of their exercise, and we are discussing the expectations or the outcome of those exercises. Another thing that is very important or critical even for those exercises is facilitation. There is a role that is called facilitator. Basically, it's a member of the team that is guiding the whole team or the other team members through the exercise. The facilitator is guiding through the practice, he's managing time, taking records, ensuring the progress of the exercise, and if somebody is stuck, he or she is providing the required support. And it's really important to have a skilled and experienced facilitator to create a realistic and a good practice training experience. And of course, in the end of every exercise, we need to sum it up, to capture and analyze the results, to understand how did it go, to get all the feedback. And the summarization is very helpful in driving the continuous improvement in the incident response preparedness. So after we have finished the collection of the data, we are getting into the lesson learned and the feedback phase. So it's debriefing and feeding it and feedback after the simulation, which is basically done by facilitators as well. So it's captured through group discussion. It can be through surveys or written reflections to gather participants' feedback. It's very important to capture positive outcomes and improvement areas to inform future training efforts and incident response strategies. So always remember, it's an ongoing process. Last but not least here is how to provide a good and constructive feedback to really improve the team performance. So the feedback should be provided in a manner that is supportive and not judgmental. So we need to focus on specific observations and specific behaviors of the participants. We need to offer suggestions for improvements and make sure we are focusing on the identifying areas of the growth, meaning where do we need to improve. So how do we evaluate training and exercises? So to evaluate the effectiveness of incident response and simulation, it's essential to achieve desired outcomes. So the objective and the evaluation is data-driven in order to understand and to improve the areas that need to have those improvements. We need to use different metrics and measurements for the training outcomes. And some examples of the metrics would be the time of the response, the accuracy of the response, the adherence to the procedures that are established in the organizations and how they were followed up through this exercise, surveys, observations, and assessments. So there are, of course, much more metrics that we can discuss, but those are the foundational and basic metrics to provide quantitative and qualitative data to evaluate the effectiveness of the training program, and of course, to continuously improve the training program and the abilities of the incident response teams based on the evaluation results through feedbacks. It's very essential to recognize that the training program is iterative and requires ongoing evaluation. So it's not a one-time shot. It's based on the results obtained from the evaluation process, and then we are doing additional exercises and we see how do we improve, and we can compare ourselves to the metrics, measurements, and results from exercise to exercise to see if we improve and where are the areas that we improve less. So some best practices for preparing teams to incident response. So first, the companies need to develop a comprehensive incident response plan, or to establish a well-defined plan that outlines the steps to be taken during the incidents. This plan includes procedures for detecting, responding, recovering from the incident response. We need to establish clear roles and responsibilities so each team member knows, each team that is involved in the incident response, of course, need to know what he needs to do and how he needs to do that. Of course, it's very important as well to implement a strong and robust detection and more monitoring mechanism to collect all the vital data, to have the identification of the of the things that are happening in the stack. So it involves a lot of technologies. One of the more classical approaches would be the events management, or SIEM, security information and events management platforms, log analysis, or any other tool that will provide the company with the information or the data for forensics and understanding of what happens. Maintenance of strong communication and coordination is crucial during the processes. So establishing of effective communication channels among the team members and stakeholders, it should include the clear lines of the communication, how the escalation procedures look like, or meaning if the incident is escalating, so who is the next to take the incident forward, who are those stakeholders, and what they need to do on each level to do the incident response as effective as possible. And of course, as you can understand from the context and from previous slides, so the regular training and simulation exercises is very, very important, because it's never a one-time shot. So of course, on the first time that a group is being trained or is being tested on some exercises on the real world mimicking scenario, it will go much harder than the next times. And after the discussions and lesson learned and different trainings that will be taken forward, the skills will be developed, the responses will be faster, and the team will be much more collaborated. So as a conclusion, the incident response training and simulations are critical components of preparation of the team to gain effective incident response. It helps team to develop all the necessary skills, practice the response strategies set by the company, and identify what are the areas that require improvements. The ongoing training and simulation exercises are very important to build a skilled and coordinated IR team. Those exercises, they give an ability to the team to stay updated with latest threats, technologies, best practices, and response strategies in a controlled environment. And prioritizing ongoing team training and progress is simply essential to enhance the capabilities of the incident response. So the dynamic nature of the cybersecurity landscape requires teams to stay proactive and well prepared to be reactive or to respond to incidents effectively. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike, for such an insightful and informative session. It was a very interesting webinar, and we hope it was worth your time too. Now, before we begin with the Q&A, I would like to inform all the attendees that the session is in sync with EC Council certifications, ECIH. EC Council Certified Incident Handler maps to the incident handler or incident manager role. Anyone with an ECIH certification is eligible for 17,000 plus jobs on LinkedIn globally with an average salary of 73,676. If you're interested to learn more about our programs, kindly take part in the poll that's going to be conducted now. Also, let us know your preferred mode of training and we will reach out to you soon. Mike, shall we start with the Q&A?
Yes, please.
Okay, so our first question is, how can incident response be integrated with broader risk management and business continuity efforts?
Yeah, it's a great question. So incident response and other information and cybersecurity processes, to make them as integrated with other processes as possible, it's very important that the person who is responsible for the information and cybersecurity in the organization will be as close as possible to the C-level management of the organization and will be continuously delivering those efforts and those information to the C-level management of the organization. So that will provide an ability to the organization to have a good focus on the incident response as well.
Thank you, Mike, for answering that question. Our next question is, what are some incident response mechanisms and technologies that are currently trending?
Yeah, sure. So mainly what is being used by the organization is a mixture of collating the events and then making some sense of those events, and those technologies are generally called SIEM, or Security Information and Event Management. And then there are different types of platforms that are doing automation or providing some playbooks. Some of them are in the category of SOAR, security orchestration, automation, and response platforms that are basically helping the participants of the events or the incidents and giving them some automated response guidelines and sometimes even technological responses by themselves in order to help them collecting the data and giving the response based on the predefined playbook or workflow or whatever it's called.
Thank you, Mike. Next question is, what are the differences between a tabletop exercise to a war gaming exercise?
The tabletop exercise is basically a discussion exercise whenever there is a subject that is being provided by a facilitator, and then the group is basically discussing or brainstorming this particular incident of how to respond it. And ball gaming, it would be just an order of how the participants are providing the answer. So, I'm just asking you a question, giving you a ball, you need to provide me an answer, and then I'm giving a ball to somebody else. So I'm basically deciding who will be the next to discuss. So it's less of the brainstorming, but it's just an order of the responses.
Thank you, Mike, for answering that question. Our next question is, what are some recommended tools you can use for incident response?
I wouldn't go now for some specific vendors or so, because there are multiple. But as I mentioned before, a good combination of skilled team and well-collected events or logs and some platform that can provide the guidance and the automation of the response, it's the best combination to make it as efficient as possible. Of course, as we live in the age of artificial intelligence, etc. So I really believe that multiple companies, or at least many companies, will be leveraging the ability of the AI in interpretation of the security events and incidents. But it's a future, and I really hope it will be coming soon.
Thank you, Mike. Our next question is there any software or open tool you can use for the simulation?
There are different types of softwares or tools, and again, during this webinar, I will not be naming some specific tools, but there are some tools that are providing synthetic attacks that can be used during the simulations. So there are some open source tools, and there are some paid tools for them. But if you just need to find some tool, you just go to Google and you are searching for synthetic attack tool, and you will get plenty of answers.
Thank you, Mike. Our next question is, how simulation exercise is normally conducted at a company? How practical is to set up a test environment for this exercise, or company normally rent test environment and mimic company environment?
Yeah, right. Generally, during the exercises, the whoever is preparing those exercises, they're generally taking different parts of the organization or of the IT of the organization. They are trying to create an environment that will be as more mimicking the real environment. So it will never be a whole environment in one exercises. So generally, as I said before, it's it's a good practice to take a small part of the organization and do exercise every time on another part. So after several exercises, the team will cover as much from the simulated world as possible.
Thank you, Mike. Next question is, could you suggest free or low-cost realistic training resources that will assist with team coordination?
Well, it's a good question. If there are some people that want to start with those exercises, it's always best or better to consult some companies that are doing those services, providing the exercises. So generally, it's a best practice not to try to do it by yourself unless you are an expert in training, but to go to some consulting firm that is practicing those and ask them for what is the best for the company, because different companies are on different maturity levels in terms of the incident response preparedness, and it's really important to have a professional opinion on what is best fit for this particular organization on this particular maturity level in this particular moment.
Thank you, Mike. Our next question is there a specific checklist that we need to consider in red team or blue team to consider?
If you are a red team or a blue team, or if you are looking for a red team or the blue team, those are two different things. And the consideration would be the type of the exercise, the type of your organization. It's mostly the type of the organization, because, for example, different blue teams, they are having different expertise. So, like, for example, if you want to practice red blue team on IT environment, it requires different skills that practicing those on the OT environment. So it very depends on what environment is required to be practiced on. So you need to make sure that the practice and the company or a consultant that you are going to work with, they do have the needed experience for the type of the environment that you require to train on.
Thank you, Mike. Next question is, what is the best incident response method when your data or system is compromised?
There is no such thing like a magic wand. So again, all those things, they are really depend on the organization, on the risk appetite of the organization, of ability of the execute the incident response of the organization, or simply the ability to outsource those to companies or consultant firms that are doing that for life.
I really tell you, we have a lot of questions today.
Yeah, that's good. So let's put some rules here. So let's try not to discuss vendors or any recommended software because it's vary, and I'm not going to talk about some specific vendor.
Okay. So our next question is, if firewall has allowed malicious, does it mean our database has been breached? If not, how will we confirm or prove it? Prove it.
So technically you cannot. So the more tools you deploy in your organization, so the more visibility you gain. So the more people you put on monitoring those tools, so the more data will be noticed. And I think it's really straightforward. So there is no holy grail, or there is no magic wand to say, okay, I'm fully covered and I'm 100% protected. And there is only one bad answer to your question. If you've been bad on that, so you will know it from tomorrow's news. So try not to get into the news.
Thank you for answering that question. Our next question is there any specific platform that we can use for Splunk CTF?
Can you say it again? Is there any specific what?
Is there any specific platform can we use for Splunk CTF?
Yeah, sure.
SPLUNK,
Splunk,
Splunk CTF.
yeah, Splunk themselves, they have a SOAR platform that is a part of their offering. It's called Phantom. So it's like from the same company. They are fully integrated with Splunk, so you can try Phantom.
Thank you, Mike. Our next question is, what are the proactive measures that the incident response team could take against a zero-day attack? How challenging it is for the incident response team to prepare against such attack? Also, it would be helpful to name a few open source tools for incident response.
Yeah, sure. So again, about the tools or open source tools, I'm avoiding providing names of the tools. Sorry. As about practices, so all the attacks that we are trying to mitigate, or most of the attacks we are trying to deal or escalating to be an incident, most of them would be a zero-day attacks, because as we are doing a good practices of deploying the tools, so those that are not zero-day attacks, they will be identified, detected, and contained by our tools like EDR, antivirus, firewalls, etc. So we are looking for practices and tools that are going to help us with zero-day attacks. So the best answer here would be to find a good synthetic attack solution that will be provided by the company that has a good malware searching mechanism that are finding those 0 days and those 0 days practices and patterns. And those tools are continuously attacking your environment in the control manner by trying to inject those 0 days and making sure that your environment is ready to deal with those 0 days attacks. This number one. Number two, it's very recommended to use threat intelligence feeds and make sure that the defense mechanisms that you are utilizing in your organization are connected to those threat intel feeds, and you are getting this information as soon as possible, updating your systems so your systems will know that those attacks are happening in the wild. So threat intel would be a really good starting point for that as well. And just to name a few, you can go for Threat Connect, you can go for Allied Vault OTX. Both solutions are nice, robust, and of course there are much more solutions that cost money and subscriptions, but you really can start with working with the OTX. You will love it.
Thank you, Mike. I'll take last two questions for the day.
Sure.
What are the best practices for a mature incident response program?
So first we need to define what means mature program. It's very challenging. So general organizations, they are adopting different frameworks, and then they stick to work with those frameworks. So it very depends what framework was chosen by a mature company. So if it would be NIST, for example, so you need to follow the framework requirements and best practices and recommendations from NIST. If it's CIS, you go for the CIS. If it's some tailor-made, so it can be tailor-made.
Thank you, Mike. Our last question is, what are the interfaces between IR, VC, and DR, and how best this can be achieved?
So the interfaces is the flow. So, if your IR practices are not good enough, so you can find yourself going into the disaster recovery or any other means of robust remediation from the incident. So my recommendations and some of the best practices would say that there should be some organizational flow of the escalation of the incident, and the organization need to set clearly where is every part entering into the operation. So for example, if we have like three tiers of the protection, so the first tier will be the IR, the second will be DR, and another one will be additional recovery phase. So we need to clearly state where, if any of the previous states fail, so how we engage the next one. And all those teams that are responsible for different types of the recovery, they need to be as coordinated as possible. So it should be a sort of organizational flow and not multiple standalone flows.
Thank you so much, Mike, and thank you again to our wonderful speaker, Mike, for answering those questions and for the great presentation and knowledge shared with our global audiences. It was a pleasure to have you with us, and we are looking for more and more sessions with you. Before we conclude the webinar, Mike, would you like to give a small message to our audiences?
Yeah, sure. So the world of the cyber is evolving. The world of the IT is evolving, and it's very important to make sure that the organizations are staying on top of what is happening, because there are much more sophisticated threat actors from the recent developments of how it works. And it's very important to make sure that information security as a domain is a part of the C-level understanding, and it's in mind of them. Otherwise, the chances of successful security program are much lower. So make sure that all the C-level in the organizations that you are managing or work for, they are aware and involved in the information security processes.
Thank you so much, Mike, for your message to our audiences. Before we end the session, I would like to announce our next CyberTalk session, Network Security Fundamentals, Understanding Threats and Vulnerabilities, which is scheduled on June 6th. This session is an expert presentation by Merlin Beyond, independent cybersecurity executive leader and advisor, enterprise and emerging Web3 and decentralized technologies. To register for this session, please do go visit our website www.eccu.edu/cybertalks. The link is given in the chat section. Hope to see you all on June 6th. With this, we end the session. You may now disconnect your lines. Thank you so much, Mike.
Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure having you. Thank you.